Everyone knows the dinosaurs, right? T-Rex, Stegosaurus, Triceratops. They're the poster children of prehistory, the undisputed kings of the earth for over 150 million years. Their reign was epic, a true saga of colossal power and ancient majesty. But what if I told you that long before the first dinosaur ever stalked across a primeval landscape, our planet was ruled by something far, far stranger, something that would make even a T-Rex do a double take? Imagine a world teeming with colossal insects, creatures so enormous they defy belief, looking like they crawled straight out of a fever dream. Picture sail-backed killers, apex predators that were more closely related to you and me than to any dinosaur. Envision ferocious beasts with fangs like daggers, ruling continents with an iron claw. This isn't just some fantastical tale. This is the true story of Earth's first rulers, a brutal alien world they inherited, conquered, and eventually lost. It's a story of evolutionary ambition, environmental upheaval, and a series of mass extinctions that repeatedly wiped the slate clean, setting the stage for the next, even wilder act. Forget everything you thought you knew about ancient Earth, because we're about to dive deep into a time when life was truly different. Section 1. The Carboniferous, a bug's paradise. Let's rewind the clock way, way back about 320 million years ago. What kind of world was it? Well, picture this. The air isn't just breathable, it's practically intoxicating. We're talking about oxygen levels hovering around a blistering 35%, significantly higher than the 21% we breathe today. This wasn't just a minor atmospheric tweak. It was a game changer, a biological jet fuel for a particular group of creatures, the arthropods. And boy, did they take full advantage. The landscape itself was a verdant, almost suffocating expanse of dense, humid rainforests. These weren't forests as we know them, filled with towering oaks or graceful birches. No, these were vast, swampy expanses dominated by giant club mosses, towering horsetails, and enormous ferns, forming what we now call the coal forests. The trunks of these ancient lycopods, like Lepidodendron and Sigillaria, were as wide as telephone poles, reaching dizzying heights, their scaly bark forming a dense, impenetrable canopy. Below, the ground was a constant mire, rich with decaying plant matter, creating the very coal seams that power our world today. In this oxygen-rich, plant-choked world, the invertebrates grew to truly monstrous proportions. This was a time when the lines between nightmare and reality blurred. Meet Arthropleura. This wasn't just a millipede, it was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the invertebrate world. Imagine something longer than a family couch, stretching out over 8 feet and a good 2 feet wide. It's the largest land invertebrate that ever lived, a segmented behemoth that would make your skin crawl. Now, thankfully, Arthropleura was a herbivore, a gentle giant in its own right, munching on decaying plant matter. It didn't bite, but if this colossal creature decided to crawl over your foot, you'd definitely know about it. This thing weighed as much as a golden retriever, a truly substantial multi-legged mass of chitin and muscle. Its sheer size was a testament to the biological possibilities of the Carboniferous. And what about the skies? Forget dainty dragonflies. Zooming overhead was Meganeura, the original Dragonzilla. We're talking about an insect with a wingspan of nearly 3 feet. That's wider than a modern hawk, wider than many eagles, and big enough to snatch a squirrel-sized critter right out of the air. Its massive compound eyes would have given it incredible vision, making it an aerial terror, a swift and agile predator in a world where few vertebrates could yet challenge its dominance. Down at ankle height, or perhaps more accurately, shin height, you'd find Pulmonoscorpius, a scorpion the size of a house cat. This wasn't some cute, cuddly feline. This was a venomous hunter with a stinger that could deliver a potent, potentially lethal dose. One jab from that stinger, and you'd be in serious trouble. There was no anti-venom for another 300 million years, so you'd be entirely out of luck. Its armored body and formidable pincers made it a formidable predator in the undergrowth. So, why so huge? It wasn't just some random evolutionary quirk. It was a beautiful, elegant interplay of simple physics and chemistry. Insects, and arthropods in general, breathe through a system of tubes called tracheae. Unlike vertebrates, they don't have lungs that actively pump air. Instead, oxygen diffuses directly into these tubes. The higher the oxygen concentration in the atmosphere, the more efficiently oxygen can diffuse into their bodies. This allowed their bodies to scale up to enormous sizes before their respiratory system hit a traffic jam, a point where the oxygen couldn't reach the inner tissues fast enough to support a larger organism. This high oxygen also fueled their metabolism, allowing for greater activity and growth. The forests themselves were a sight to behold, but also a dangerous place. With so much plant matter and such high oxygen levels, wildfires were an ever-present, terrifying threat. A single spark, perhaps from lightning, could ignite an inferno that would sweep through the dense vegetation, turning vast swathes of the bug's paradise into ash. The oxygen-rich air transformed what might be a controlled burn today into an uncontrollable, raging conflagration, shaping the landscape and creating new niches for life to colonize after the flames subsided. But even paradise has an expiration date, especially when it's built on such specific environmental conditions. As the planet's climate began to swing cooler and geological processes slowly caused atmospheric oxygen levels to dip, the supersized nightclub for bugs started to close down. The conditions that favored gigantism for arthropods began to recede. By the start of the Permian period, the once colossal insects and arachnids began to shrink, gradually returning to more modest sizes. The stage was being cleared, the curtain was about to rise, and a new cast of characters was preparing for their grand entrance. Section 2. Early Permian. Sailbacks on top. Welcome to the early Permian, roughly 299 to 272 million years ago. The world has undergone a dramatic transformation. The lush, swampy Carboniferous forests are largely gone, replaced by a drier, more arid landscape. This is the era of Pangaea, the supercontinent, slowly but surely coalescing, stretching from pole to pole. This massive landmass profoundly impacted global climate, leading to extreme seasonal variations, vast deserts in the interior, and a much harsher environment than the Carboniferous. Rivers were seasonal, and the interior was bone-dry, creating challenging conditions for terrestrial life. Yet, life found a way, and with new challenges came new rulers. The top dog, the undisputed apex predator of this early Permian world, was a creature that sported a literal billboard on its back. Dimetrodon. Now, despite what every kid's toy set, every cartoon, and countless inaccurate depictions might tell you, Dimetrodon is emphatically not a dinosaur. This is a crucial distinction. Dimetrodon was a synapsid, a group often referred to as mammal-like reptiles. In fact, it's more closely related to you and me, and to all other mammals, than it is to any dinosaur. This might sound surprising, but its skull structure, particularly the single temporal fenestra, opening behind the eye socket, places it firmly on our evolutionary tree, long before the dinosaurs even thought about showing up. Imagine this creature. 4 meters long, a powerful, muscular body weighing in at around 250 kilos, armed with incredibly sophisticated teeth, and, of course, that iconic sail. That sail, a prominent neural spine structure covered in skin and blood vessels, wasn't just for show. It was a sophisticated piece of biological engineering, allowing Dimetrodon to essentially bodybuild for temperature regulation. In the cool mornings of the Permian, it could orient its sail towards the sun, rapidly warming its large body, giving it a crucial advantage over slower, colder prey. As the day heated up, it could angle the sail away from the sun or seek shade, preventing overheating. This ability to thermoregulate effectively would have made it a highly active and successful predator in its environment. Dimetrodons. Teeth were revolutionary. They were the first true canines Earth had ever produced, a clear sign of its predatory prowess. Unlike the uniform teeth of many reptiles, Dimetrodon had differentiated teeth. Sharp, dagger-like teeth at the front for grabbing and puncturing, and smaller serrated teeth further back for slicing and tearing flesh. This specialized dentition allowed for a highly efficient kill. Its victims, typically large, lumbering salad munchers known as Edaphosaurus, never stood a chance once Dimetrodon got its jaws on them. Edaphosaurus was another synapsid, a herbivore that also sported a sail, though its sail was thought to be for display or perhaps even support for its heavy body rather than primarily thermoregulation. These two sail-backed giants represent a fascinating evolutionary parallel. Life was good for the sailbacks, the dominant predators and large herbivores of the early Permian. They ruled the terrestrial ecosystems, thriving in the drier conditions Pangaea offered. But, as with all rulers, their reign wouldn't last forever. Evolution is a relentless force, and environments are constantly changing. As we move into the late Permian, the global thermostat began to crank up again, leading to warmer, more humid conditions and the spread of new swampy areas. This change in climate favored new forms of life, and new, more agile predators began to evolve. The very sail that had been Dimetrodon's advantage now became a potential target, a large, visible structure that could hinder it in new environments. The stage was set for the next wave of rulers, creatures even more advanced and specialized. Section 3. Late Permian, the Gorgonopsid Empire. Fast forward another 10 million years or so to the late Permian, roughly 260 to 252 million years ago. The world is again subtly shifting. The vast, uniform deserts of the early Permian are giving way to more varied landscapes, scrubby floodplains, drier forests, and expansive river systems. Pangaea is still very much a supercontinent, but its internal dynamics are creating diverse ecological niches. The synapsids, our mammal-like reptiles, have continued their evolutionary journey, splitting into distinct and highly successful lineages. We see two dominant tribes emerge: the barrel cows, known as Dicynodonts, and the terrifying saber-toothed nightmares, the Gorgonopsids. Let's talk about the Gorgonopsids first, because they truly embody the apex predator role of this era. Take Inostrancevia, for example, a name that sounds as formidable as the creature itself. This was a beast the size of a lion, but far more primitive and arguably more terrifying. Its most striking feature? 6-inch fangs, massive saber-like canines that protruded from its upper jaw, designed for delivering devastating, deep wounds. Unlike many sprawling reptiles, Inostrancevia had legs tucked more directly under its body, allowing for a more efficient, powerful gait, much like a cheetah. This meant it could sprint for short, explosive bursts, ambushing its prey with incredible speed and power. Its bite wasn't just powerful, it was surgical, capable of cracking a coconut, or more likely a skull, with chilling precision. These were highly specialized killers, masters of their domain. On the other side of the predator-prey dynamic were the herbivores, and they were far from pushovers. Creatures like moschops were the tanks of the late Permian. Tipping the scales at an impressive 700 kilos, these hefty Dicynodonts were built like living battering rams. Their skulls, incredibly thick and reinforced, were designed like sledgehammers. Imagine males of this species engaging in headbutting contests, colliding at 10 miles an hour, the sound echoing across the red dunes and ancient floodplains like a coconut hitting concrete. These were not just passive grazers, they were robust, powerful animals, capable of defending themselves and their territory, making life challenging even for the formidable Gorgonopsids. This period truly saw the development of what we can recognize as full-blown, complex food webs on land. It wasn't just a simple case of big eating small. There were intricate relationships, predators chasing specific prey, scavengers cleaning up the remains, and herbivores specializing in different types of plant matter. There's also evidence to suggest that some of these synapsids, particularly the dicynodonts, exhibited parental care, guarding burrows, and raising their young, a behavior we typically associate with mammals. The nights weren't just quiet. They were alive with the sounds and movements of these creatures, the darkness punctuated by eyes reflecting starlight, hinting at a world teeming with hidden life and constant struggle. What's fascinating about these animals is how far they had come. They weren't just reptiles with hair, though some may have had rudimentary fur. They were the opening chapter of the mammal story, representing crucial evolutionary steps towards endothermy, warm-bloodedness, differentiated teeth, and more upright postures. These incredible creatures, particularly the gorgonopsids and dicynodonts, didn't just exist. They ruled every major continent, from the vast interior of Pangaea to its coastal fringes. They were the dominant terrestrial vertebrates, the pinnacle of evolution for their time, carving out niches and establishing complex ecosystems that had never been seen before. Their empire was vast, their reign undisputed, until it wasn't. Section 4. The Great Dying. Then, with a terrifying cataclysmic force, the trap door slammed shut. About 252 million years ago, the Earth endured the most severe extinction event in its history, the Permian-Triassic extinction, often chillingly referred to as the Great Dying. This wasn't just a bad day for life. It was an apocalyptic chapter that nearly sterilized the planet. The primary culprit? Massive, sustained volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia. These weren't your typical localized volcanic events. We're talking about the Siberian Traps, a colossal flood basalt event that lasted for 1 million years straight, spewing unimaginable quantities of lava and toxic gases into the atmosphere. Imagine 1 million years of continuous supervolcanic activity. The consequences were devastating and cascaded through every ecosystem on Earth. First, the sheer volume of ash and sulfur dioxide blocked out the sun, leading to a volcanic winter and a rapid drop in global temperatures. But this was quickly followed by a far more insidious and prolonged threat: the release of vast amounts of greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide and methane from the eruptions and from the baking of coal beds by the lava flows. This triggered runaway global warming, with ocean temperatures rising by as much as 8 to 10 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere itself became a toxic soup. Poison gases, including massive amounts of hydrogen sulfide, turned the sky bronze, creating acid rain that stripped forests bare. The planet quite literally stank of rotten eggs, a horrifying, pervasive stench signaling the death of ecosystems. The oceans, once teeming with life, became anoxic, devoid of oxygen. The warming waters couldn't hold as much dissolved oxygen, and the influx of nutrients from eroded land masses fueled algal blooms, which then died and decayed, further stripping the water of oxygen. This created vast dead zones where nothing could survive. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of atmospheric CO2, dissolved the shells and skeletons of marine organisms, wiping out entire phyla. The numbers are stark, almost incomprehensible. 90% of all species on Earth vanished. Think about that for a moment. 9 out of every 10 living things, gone. Trilobites, those iconic segmented creatures that had graced the oceans for hundreds of millions of years, were completely wiped out. Sea scorpions, once formidable marine predators, disappeared. Those elegant, terrifying gorgonopsids, the rulers of the land, gone. Vast forests combusted, rivers boiled, and the fossil record of this period is marked by a dusty, barren layer of ash and rock, a silent testament to the planet's greatest biological catastrophe. It was a reset button on an unimaginable scale. But here's the twist, the strange, twisted kind of beginning that every ending holds. This extinction event scrubbed the evolutionary board so clean that new players finally got a seat at the table. The ecological niches were vacant, the old guard gone. Among the few hardy survivors, a strange little creature called Lystrosaurus emerged as an unlikely champion. These barrel-chested dicynodonts, roughly the size of a dog or a pig, grazed on the ruined world's sparse vegetation. They were adaptable, tough, and reproduced like wildfire, multiplying across the desolate landscapes. They became so incredibly common that if you could time travel back to the early Triassic, just after the Great Dying, you'd probably trip over a dozen Lystrosaurus before you saw another vertebrate. They were everywhere, a testament to resilience in the face of utter devastation. And hidden in the underbrush, scuttling amongst the debris of the old world, were tiny archosaurs, the early relatives of what would one day become crocodilians and, crucially, dinosaurs. These small, agile creatures nibbled on insects, scavenged what they could, and perhaps, in a metaphorical sense, dreamed of empire. They were the quiet inheritors, waiting for their moment, poised to explode into an evolutionary radiation that would define the next great era of Earth's history. The stage was now set, not for their immediate dominance, but for their eventual spectacular rise. Conclusion and teaser. So, the next time someone mentions the age of dinosaurs and all those famous names like T-Rex and Brontosaurus, take a moment. Remember the deeper past, the truly alien worlds that came before. Remember Arthropleura, the millipede longer than your kitchen table, a segmented titan of the Carboniferous. Recall Dimetrodon, the sail-backed predator that owned the sun-baked plains of the early Permian, a creature more closely related to us than to any dinosaur. And don't forget Inostrancevia, the saber-toothed gorgonopsid, whose 6-inch fangs made the late Permian night a terror for anything caught in its path. These magnificent, strange, and often terrifying creatures rose to power. They ruled vast continents, adapted to incredible environmental shifts, and carved out empires that lasted for millions of years. They developed complex ecosystems, sophisticated hunting strategies, and even early forms of parental care. They were the dominant forces on Earth, shaping its landscapes and its evolutionary trajectory. And then they vanished, often violently, sometimes gradually, always making way for the next act. Their fall, whether through climate change or catastrophic extinction, carved the path, cleared the slate, and opened the door for history's next headline act. The world was remade, the rules rewritten, and a new dynasty was about to begin its ascent. Want to meet the very first real dinosaurs? Want to see how these scrappy archosaur survivors, emerging from the shadow of the Great Dying, seized the crown and began their unparalleled 150-million-year reign? Stay tuned, because that story, the true dawn of the dinosaur age, is what's coming next. If you enjoyed this wild trip through deep time, if these ancient titans captured your imagination, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. And seriously, let me know in the comments, which pre-dinosaur beast would you least like to meet in a dark alley? I think I'll stick with the Arthropleura. At least it was a vegetarian.